This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. I lend my voice to those who can't. It's time we try, it's time we care, it's time we stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome to the Special Chronicles podcast. My name is Daniel Smukowski. I'm the founder and host of Special Chronicles, an athlete leader with Special Olympics Illinois, and a former Southern Striver Global Messenger. Our website, specialchronicles.com. Follow Special Chronicles on socials. Subscribe to our newsletter. Find the show notes and all of our series on specialchronicles.com. This week on the Special Chronicles podcast series, a recap of Turin 2025. We are concluding this series with our guest, Jenny Fortner, to talk about how she and her son Joey, a Yale University student with Athletes in Action, volunteered at the world's largest inclusive sports event, Special Olympics World Winter Games, Turin 2025. Welcome back to Special Chronicles, Jenny.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge fan of Special Chronicles, so this is such a privilege and honor to be joining you today. I really appreciate your having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I saw you, I think on Instagram and Facebook, when you shared some pictures when you were over in Turin, I thought that I had have you on, and for our longtime listeners, we remember back in March of 2019, you were on this podcast for just a 10-minute segment that we quoted in Abu Dhabi at the hotel that we were staying at. There was I think there was a plane flying overhead, and we were outside.
It was amazing. That was such an incredible experience, and then that was also so surreal because if you remember, then the next year was COVID, and we couldn't even leave our houses. But the year before, here we were with 170 countries together in Abu Dhabi. So I remember that like yesterday. And
I know. And the first mentor that I had, Chris Winston, I was texting with him a few weeks ago, and he texted back a few pictures from our trip over there, and it still brings a lot of memories from those games. And so what intrigued me to have you on for this episode is when you shared about how it's been 30 years since you first started in the movement with volunteering, and that now that your son Joey is a student at Yale, how he's getting started volunteering just the same way of how you got started. And I got a text from a mutual friend with a couple surprise questions that I'm going to throw in there. But first, can you tell us about your first experience volunteering for Special Olympics when you were a freshman at the University of Chicago, and what drew you to get involved in this movement 30 years ago?
Absolutely. And I have to say, I cannot believe it was 30 years ago because it feels like just yesterday in so many ways. And it was such a meaningful experience looking back. It's so meaningful, as a matter of fact, that I actually keep a picture of that day on my desk right back here. So I think of it so often and so fondly. But yeah, my first experience, I played basketball at the University of Chicago, and my first experience volunteering was with our women's athletic. Oh boy, there it is. Yep, that would be me with long hair 30 years ago. And then down below is actually my son and I volunteering together now. So full circle there. Yeah, Joey's in that one. But our team volunteered, and we sponsored Team Ada S. McKinley, and we were at the spring games at the University of Chicago, and it was such a great bonding experience for our team. but also it was truly an experience that changed my life. I fell in love with the passion and the courage and the community, really just the joy that you felt that day with the athletes competing. And I just felt, I learned so much from them that day. Here, I thought I was volunteering, and as you'll hear so many volunteers say, my cup was overflowing. And I just knew it was something that I wanted to continue to do, whenever I could, wherever I could. And so it's hard to believe, but amazingly 30 years later, here I am still volunteering and loving really every minute of it. And as a matter of fact, just 2 months ago, I went back to University of Chicago. They're still hosting an annual basketball game. And I got to see A.S. McKinley in the stands. And sure enough, some of the individuals that were competing that day were in the stands, and I got to high five them and see them. And so lots of full circle moments. And of course, now being in Turin with my son was just amazing.
Awesome. So for those of you that are just listening to the audio podcast, I know many of you that are listening to the program are just listening to us on audio, but you might want to go check out the video on our YouTube, specialchronicles.com, and then click on YouTube. And you can see some of the pictures that we're going to put up throughout this episode. It was neat too. And I think you shared this picture on your Instagram and Facebook side by side. And so it was neat to see that full circle moment.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is Joey, my son, my oldest son, he's a football player at Yale. So this is a group of student athletes. He, as you said, is with a group Athletes in Action that focuses on faith and service. And we'll talk more about them. But they came over. There was a group of 13 from Yale, but 100 college student athletes from across the country that went to Turin, Italy to serve over their spring breaks. And what was amazing to me, I thought back, Joey is the exact same age that I was in that picture volunteering. And so that was a really special moment as a mom, and to share that experience together with him. So I hope 30 years from now, he'll still be volunteering along with my other 2 kids as well.
Awesome. So for our listeners that are watching the video, this picture that you see on the screen, Joey is the one on the left, right?
Yes, that's correct. I think since then he may have shaved his mustache and beard, but that is
awesome. So how has, I'm sure you've seen Special Olympics, you've seen this movement evolve a lot in the past 3 decades. How has your journey with Special Olympics evolved over the past 30 years, the past 3 decades, and what has kept you so passionate about volunteering and advocating for so many of the athletes like myself and the over 5 million athletes across the globe?
Yeah, that's a great question, Daniel. Once I started working, I knew I wanted to continue to volunteer, and I hope everyone out there listening goes out and just goes to one event, because it really just hooks you in. And that was the case for me, at least. And thankfully, I worked for a firm, Goldman Sachs, for 25 years, who was extremely supportive of giving back to the community. And so we had a community teamworks day when I was a first-year analyst, that we could go out of the office and volunteer. And so I said, well, could we go to the spring games as a group? And we did. And it was the same spring games that I volunteered when I was in college. And from there, they're still in Chicago. Yep. Back then it was at Hyde Park. Now it's in Chicago, but they still volunteer there, which I love. And from there, a mentor and friend, Carl Allegretti, who worked at Deloitte at the time, and he was chair of the board of Illinois, encouraged me to put my hat in the ring to join the Special Olympics Illinois board. And I remember thinking, gosh, I'm young. I don't know that, I thought I wasn't maybe qualified yet or anything. He said, no, I really think that you should give it a shot. And I'm just so blessed that Special Olympics Illinois at the time took chance on a young 20-something, because that really became one of the most meaningful experiences of my life, being a part of the board. I was on the board for 20 years volunteering, and one of the things that I love the most about it, and you'll appreciate this because you know, are a board member, have been a board member of Illinois, is that athletes of Special Olympics worked alongside as board members. And to this day, some of the board member athletes and I are dear friends. Some of the best friends in my entire life, including yourself, are from that time serving on the Special Olympics Illinois board. And then from there, you know, fast forward, I was asked to co-chair the 50th anniversary of Special Olympics at Soldier Field, where the very first games took place. And that was 1968 were those games. And so 50 years later, we had 10,000 people for our first ever Global Day of Inclusion. We built an eternal flame of hope that's still there to stand for hope and inclusion for all, that's always lit. And we raised $10 million for the movement. And it was just an incredible experience to have the world come to Chicago for that. And after that, they asked me to join the Special Olympics International Board. So I'm starting my third term there. I'm on the executive committee and finance chair. And then I'm wearing my shirt today, but law enforcement, which just does an incredible job. The LETR, Law Enforcement Torture Run, asked if I'd join their international council. And so I'm on my second term there. And, you know, really what has kept me so passionate about this is that I have met the most amazing people along the way through this movement. The people that SOI serves and the people that are a part of it are passionate, determined, they're brave, they're brilliant, and they're just so incredibly kind. And I continue to advocate. You'd ask why. And it's because we are making progress. I really have seen it over 30 years, and that's encouraging. But there is still so much work to be done. And I just vowed that I will spend the rest of my life volunteering and trying to give back, you know, all that Special Olympics has given to me. And the only other thing I just wanted to add to that long-winded answer, but you can tell how much it means to me, is I, along the way, probably about 5 to 7 years into volunteering, we were blessed in my family to have Mikey and Johnny, my identical twin nephews, join our lives. And Mikey and Johnny are now 23 years old, and they were diagnosed at age 2 with intellectual disabilities. And at age 8, they participated in their first Special Olympics. And that's another picture that I have somewhere in the office, because that was such an incredible day. My 3 kids, Joey, who you saw in that picture, Mikey and Mary, got to high five and see their cousins win their first medals. And I remember seeing my brother and looking, and he had tears in his eyes. And I said, you know, what are you thinking? And he just said, wow, this is the first day that my boys have been able to be celebrated for what they can do and not told what they couldn't do. And so that was it. I was already hooked, but seeing it as a family member, what it meant to my kids to high five their cousins, and what it meant to the families and to my nephews, has just been life changing in every way.
Awesome. Yeah, it's neat to see how you got started with Special Olympics, and then where you are today. Perhaps we might even have a listener that might be in their 20s and want to join the board of directors or get involved. I remember when, as being an athlete board member and being at the board meetings with you, and then the eternal flame of hope at the 50th. I think with either my Canon or my Nikon camera, I took a picture, and I got it printed. I printed an 8x10 of that, and I've got it in my living room. My mom, I think, has it hanging up in her living room as well. So yeah, that yeah. So
tears in my eyes, because wow, that just brings tears to my eyes. That means so much to you. I have my statue of the Flame of Hope behind me, and I look at it every day, and it really does mean something. It's, the eternal flame of hope for inclusion and acceptance and respect for all. And we are making progress, like I said, but we still have some ways to go. And it inspires me every day to keep the work going and to keep doing and to keep doing what you're doing, Daniel, because you're really doing an incredible job.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. So building upon your how you just shared the change and how you got involved over the past 30 years. In your perspective, how have you seen Special Olympics? How have you seen this movement grown and impacted the lives of athletes like myself and their families?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I was thinking about this 30 years and what has changed, and also at the core, what has still stayed the same, which is beautiful. Because I think it's really important as you grow in any business or any company that you stay true to your values. And so the most important thing is, I believe that the oath, let me be brave, and in the attempt, right? And if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. And that idea of acceptance and inclusion for all has stayed at the values and at the core. But what I love that has changed as well over the last 30 years is really when I first started, it was more, I'll call it traditional sports, where the Special Olympics athletes would compete with each other. And while we still had that as a core program, what I think is really exciting is the movement has also evolved to include unified sports, which for those that don't know, unified sports and unified champion schools are where athletes with and without disabilities have the opportunity to compete with each other. And I think that has been a really exciting change in the movement as well, and a great addition. Also, healthy athletes, which is where athletes get health screenings, eye screenings, hearing screenings, and dental screenings, and doctors and health professionals are trained to be looking and thinking about Special Olympics athletes and individuals with special needs. And what is amazing about that is I have seen athletes see for the first time through opening eyes and get glasses that they didn't even know they needed because of these screenings, or been able to hear with hearing aids for the first time. In one case, I saw an athlete whose life was literally saved because he had never been to the dentist. Dental insurance is sometimes hard to get. And so he had never been to the dentist, and they found he had oral cancer, but they caught it early enough because of these screenings. So that is truly life-changing. And then lastly, and maybe my favorite, is the Athlete Inclusive Leaders Program, the Athlete Leadership Program, because through that, Special Olympics athletes are trained to be global messengers, of which you are one, a Sergeant Shriver global messenger now, which is a huge honor, Daniel, and also do leadership training. And I just love that, because I have seen athletes find their voices, go on to start podcasts like you have, Daniel, and also good friends Lisa and Kurt Noble and so many others. I've seen athletes give speeches that before would not even talk. I know some that had not found their voice when they were in grade school and high school, and now go on to give speeches in front of huge audiences. And maybe even most importantly, I've seen athletes open their own businesses like Just Z in Illinois, and go on to work at global companies like you and so many are at United and Jewel and Walgreens and so many places that are now hiring athletes because they see the amazing workers that they are. They see the value, they see all that they have to offer. I believe the sky is the limit here, and to see where this has evolved over 30 years has been so encouraging and so inspiring. Just honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing, not just the sports that we're involved in, but it's amazing the confidence that we've all gained through athlete leadership programs, whether at the local level or even the 10 of us every 4 years that are Southern Tribal Global Messengers. I've met so many more friends, not just here in Illinois, but across the country and even across the globe that I'm still in touch with today. You mentioned our mutual friends, Lisa and Kurt Noble. got a couple of texts here that came in. As will we, Conan. I'm gonna ask one question that kind of fits into what we're talking about now, and then I'm gonna save the other question for the next segment. But one question that kind of built upon what we've been talking about is Lisa is asking about how things have changed since you first got involved. I think you kind of answered that a little bit. So if Lisa Noble is listening, we'll just say listen to.
Hopefully I answered it, but no, I think that's the biggest, the things that I just mentioned. I would also say that I love another way that things have changed is I really see these Special Olympics athletes leading the movement now and in the future. And I think that is an awesome change. So in every program, athletes are working in the program, they're leading the program. They're the ones that are coming up. The entire closing ceremonies at Turin was led, created, and produced by Special Olympics athletes. And it was the best closing ceremonies I've ever seen.
Yeah. Speaking of
example.
Yeah, awesome. I love that, and I'm glad that you mentioned about another thing that has changed is how it's being athlete led. Because we're pre-recording this series, so the episode that aired last week, or by the time our listeners hear this, it would have happened a couple months ago. It would have aired a couple months ago. But with Grace Payne, one of the global messengers, she mentioned that, as well as Lou, the chief of sporting competition, had mentioned about how the closing ceremonies was hosted and led by this Cohen class of Southern Tribal global messengers who are athletes, and it's the first time that a closing ceremonies at a World Games has been athlete-led. So and
it was incredible. They did an amazing job. I was blown away, and it goes to show, I think, where the future of the movement is headed, and that's athlete-led.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So, yeah, I know. Seeing a lot of the pictures. I think SOI just put up on YouTube the recap show that aired on ESPN and ABC, and watching some of that, made me wish that I was over there with you guys. But yeah,
you were there in spirit.
I know. I'm hopefully we were trying to find we were trying to see if we could produce a daily podcast over there. But that sponsorship had fell through. I won't get into the details on air, but hopefully at the next World Games in Santiago, Chile, the first time that it will be in the Latin America region. Hopefully, we can bring we can produce a daily podcast.
I love it. That'd be awesome.
So, as a Cohen board member of Special Olympics International, what are some of the initiatives or changes that you are most proud to have contributed yourself? I think you mentioned the Eternal Flame of Hope that you've got behind me. I've got a picture down the hall from where my studio is here. But what are some of the changes and initiatives that you're most proud of?
Oh gosh, I just feel it's less about me really and more about the athletes, and I just feel so humbled to be a part of it every single day. And yeah, I love working on the 50th anniversary because seeing 10,000 people fill Soldier Field to celebrate inclusion was really meaningful, and seeing that flame of hope, which was lit in the rain. And I remember thinking, oh, it's pouring rain, the sky's open, right? At the moment we were going to light it. And I'm like, okay, God, if this can be lit, I know it will truly last an eternity. And so every time I drive by Chicago and see that and what it stands for, like we talked about, really means a lot. But truly my favorite is just going to the events and from local to global, and just being there with the families and the athletes in helping any way that I can. And I think sometimes that's the biggest misnomer about volunteering is I think many people go in and they think, how they're going to give and they give so much and yeah, that's true. But every single time I go to volunteer, and that's true with Special Olympics and other orgs, but especially Special Olympics, is I learn and grow and receive so much more than I give. And as I said earlier, I just feel like I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to give back all that Special Olympics has taught and given to me and my family. And so, you asked what I'm proud of. I guess it would just be, I feel more humbled than proud just to be a part of this movement. And now seeing my children and my family, broader family, be a part of it is just incredibly rewarding and humbling.
Awesome. And speaking of volunteers, a quick side note, one of our listeners who I think lives in the same area that I live in. She's also friends with my girlfriend Georgia.
Oh yeah.
Her name's Izzy, and I first saw her at one of my Special Olympics basketball games. Actually, the first time that I ever made a 3-point shot, she was coaching the other team, and then I went into her on the cop on a rooftop a few months later. But she volunteered not only at the last USA Games, but she volunteered in Berlin as well, and so here's an example of one of our listeners who is volunteering. So
I love that.
Speaking to our other listeners, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out their volunteer journey with Special Olympics, especially someone who might be unsure of where to start or what role that they would play?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question because I do get people coming to me and saying, "Oh, I want to volunteer. I'm just not sure, and how do I do it, or what do I do?" And I always answer, it's like the famous Nike commercial, just do it, just go and do it. And I would say, you don't have to know exactly what you're doing. You don't have to, I was so nervous to join the board, as a 20-something, and I was like, well, I don't know if I have the skills yet, and then you'll develop them, you'll learn them. But I would say that Special Olympics truly is one of the easiest organizations you can start volunteering at. So if you've never volunteered before, I say just go to an event because everyone is so welcoming. It's like the mission, and they're so kind. And I promise you will find your spot in no time. And sometimes it's just going to an event and you can go and show up and cheer on the athletes, give high fives, give hugs. My prediction is that you will be hooked, just like I was from day one. And we hear that all of the time. I would say to contact your local Special Olympics. You can go online and look at your local state, because through that, you're see all of the local games. A lot of people kind of think Special Olympics is one event. It's like the global games that we just had. But in reality, there's 100,000 events annually for Special Olympics around the globe, which means I think in Illinois, we have one going practically every single day, if not many more than one. And so just even locally in your community, you can find that. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I'm part of the law enforcement torch run. So you can also go to your local police station, and so many law enforcement officers are working with Special Olympics on top of their day job as volunteers, whether that be organizing the polar plunge, which you may have heard about, or cop on a rooftop. But they also need lots of help in volunteering. And you haven't lived till you plunge in negative, degree weather in cold water. I know my kids got involved with that really early, and it was just so much fun. And I think you'll really enjoy it. So I love this. There's a saying that I've heard. It's don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. And what I take from that is just go for it. You don't have to be perfect in your volunteer work. Just try and go out there. And I think you'll be really, really glad that you did in the end. I know I was.
Yeah, awesome. So for those of you listening to audio, I put up on the screen You can find your local program at specialolympics.org, and we'll put a link in the show notes as well, where you all can. I believe it's very easy. You can, I think, right at the top of the website, they've got a link that you can click on and find. If you're listening across the U.S. or across the globe, you can find your local program. But I want to briefly highlight a couple of things that you said about volunteering, which connects with what our chairman, Tim Shriver, who Tim has been on this podcast a couple times. A few of his children have been on as well. But one thing that Tim wrote about, which the first time that Tim was on was, it was during the 50th anniversary, and we were at the Intercontinental Hotel, and we recorded in the hallway of a hotel. That was the only place. I asked them to put a Special Olympics backdrop behind us, so at least that there would be some branding. Something that Tim wrote about in his first book, Fully Alive, which Tim couldn't believe that I annotated his entire book that he had signed for me, but he wrote about a chapter called "The Fun That Lasts," and he wrote about how his son Sam had compared going to Disney World, where it's just the fun just stays there, but when you come to a Special Olympics event, it's the fun that lasts. And I think that also kind of ties in with what you said. And then another note about how you said how Special Olympics is so welcoming is I saw some clips of I think Tim's speech at the opening ceremony in Turin was, you can find it on the SOI on YouTube channel, and he talked about how you've come to the Special Olympics country, and yeah, I think that's also that also
I love that. He talked about you come to Special Olympics country where everyone is welcoming and everyone's respectful and inclusive. And, what could our world look like if we all treated each other that way? And it was really inspiring and a great perspective. And people were really moved by that comment. And I love thinking about it that way.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to combine the next couple questions just for timing.
Sure.
What has been the most I'm sure it might be hard to pick, but what has been the most rewarding part of working with Special Olympics athletes like myself and so many others over the years, particularly with the athletes you've met at the World Games, like my friends Nasha and Manu and Grace and so many others, and then tie that in with how volunteering with Special Olympics aligns with your personal values and how it's influenced your perspective of inclusion and of community.
Oh, such big questions, and such great questions. I have to say by far the most rewarding part of volunteering Special Olympics has been developing such special bonds and close friendships. Yes, with the fellow volunteers that I've known over 30 years, but importantly with the Special Olympics athletes, as I mentioned, those who have served with me, those I've cheered on. The Special Olympics athletes that I've met have become some of the best friends in my entire life. And I also have loved meeting athletes from all over the globe. I just love hearing stories. The stories that some of these individuals have are the most inspiring that I've ever heard in my entire life. And I think sitting there and just listening sometimes, we're all so busy. And when you go to a World Games and you're there for that purpose and just to sit and pause, and I'm so grateful for your podcast because it essentially gives people the opportunity to hear these incredible stories that otherwise may not have been heard. Yeah. And they are so important to be heard. And so I think that is incredible. And when I hear these stories, it just is a reminder that there is still a lot of work to be done, especially in certain areas, not in our country, but also around the globe. And there's still stigma to overcome, and there are gifts and talents in all of these amazing individuals. And we just need a platform to get them seen and heard. And so I would say that that's been some of the most rewarding, is becoming friends and hearing the stories. And then I think you asked a little bit about personal values and how it's influenced my perspective on inclusion. And I guess that ties in a bit, because I really believe that God has given each and every one of us, I believe God makes us in his image, and that God has given each and every one of us gifts and talents that are meant to be shared with others. And so to me, volunteering with Special Olympics is so aligned, because not only is it giving me a way to give back and use some of the gifts and talents God has given me, but also importantly, I see it as an opportunity to help individuals who maybe have not had that opportunity for their gifts and talents to be seen, developed, and shared, to do that. And as you had mentioned earlier, seeing some of the athletes go through the global leadership training and give speeches for the first time, when I knew them back when, and they were maybe shy or more quiet, and to be out on this platform and sharing their gifts and talents and having their voice heard, is one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And so, as you kind of said, if we could have the whole world behave a little more, like the Special Olympics community, seeing the good in others, respecting each other, I just think this world could be such a happier, more inclusive, respectful, and amazing place. And I am so grateful to the athletes of the Special Olympics, because they give me hope that can be the reality, that, that global, the flame of hope that we talk about. When I go to a Special Olympics, it burns so bright. And, especially now when you hear the news or other things, it can weigh on you. And when you go to one of these events and you see what it can be like, it gives you hope that you can bring that little bit each day to your own life and whatever interactions you're having. And so that's really how it's helped me deepen and, I think, reinforce the values that I was raised with, but manifest in new and different ways each time.
Absolutely. I want to comment on a couple quick things that you said. One is a quote that when my mom first saw me compete in Special Olympics down at ISU at our summer games, and I think SOI, I think they've used this quote in some of their reposts as well, and I think possibly Tim might have even used this quote that my mom has said, but if the whole world were like Special Olympics, then there would be no wars. And I think that also ties in with what you said. And then you mentioned about the impact of those of us athlete leaders. I want to and the from where we've started and to where we are today. I want to mention one a mutual friend of ours, Jack Carl Widow, who's
Jack Lowwitter,
whose mom Brooke is now the past
Kathy Schneidwin. Brooke was chair, and now Kathy, and amazing friends, dear friends.
And so I remember I was at that training that I had his first athlete leadership training, and I remember how he I forgot how old he was, 8 or 9, or he was really young and shy to give that first speech. And now to see, I think he's graduated high school, but it's amazing to see where and I had a couple years ago, I had Jack and his sister Sophie on because they were, I think, U.S. youth, national youth ambassadors, and so it's amazing to that's one example. Jack is a great example of where someone who might not have thought that he would be public speaking and being an athlete leader, and then to see where he is today.
Yeah, it's so rewarding, and it just goes to show you if you give people the opportunity to use their voice, and athletes who, the last thing I just want to add on that topic is something that the World Games really taught me, because you also said about the global, not every individual is able to speak, so maybe it's sign language, maybe they're not nonverbal, but I think what really struck me recently at the World Games was that there is a universal language. And whether I did not speak Italian, we met an amazing couple, Joey and I did, and maybe we'll talk about it later, but Ted and Wilma from the Netherlands. And we were able to share, we had, they could speak better English than I could speak, in their language. But whether it's that conversation or whether it is a look, that there is a universal language in Special Olympics of love, unconditional love. And I think some of the most profound interactions I've had have been with individuals who are nonverbal. And so I just want to pause on that concept, because I think it makes you think about those interactions in such a different way. And that what if our universal language was unconditional love, respect, and inclusion? And again, not everyone maybe can be verbal, but they still are contributing in different ways, whether that's a hug, a look, a huge smile. And that to me, I think, has been one of the most meaningful lessons that I've learned through going to a World Games.
Awesome. Yeah, I've given a couple of speeches on that theme of unconditional love. And one time during my time as a Southern Tribal Global Messenger, I gave a quote to SOI about how us athletes bring love to people who show us hate, and I think that's a big, especially with a lot that's going on in across the globe today, and with a lot of hate being shown towards those of us with intellectual disabilities, that unconditional love of when people come to a Special Olympics event, see us speak, that unconditional love, I think, Whitty speaks a lot.
So powerful. It is so powerful and meaningful. 100%.
Yeah. Before we take a quick break, to wrap up this segment, what do you hope that the legacy of your involvement with Special Olympics will be, both for you personally and for the movement as a whole?
That's a big one. I just hope that the athletes and the families involved with Special Olympics will just know how much I love, respect, and value them and all that they've taught me. And so it kind of comes back the opposite way, I would say. I hope that would be a legacy. I also hope that my family and my children will look at the world through that lens as well, about seeing the good, seeing the gifts and talents that everyone has, and finding ways that we can all share that with each other. And I think that's an important legacy. And, I just hope that we continue to have unified teams, because I think, studies have shown that those who participate in unified activities and experiences, whatever those may look like, when they're younger, are more likely to hire and to be inclusive in their practices when they're older. And so I think that's a great legacy as well. And I'm excited about that part of the movement, because I'm starting to see that play out. I see you and some of the fellow Special Olympics Illinois athletes working at United. I see, one of my dear friends for 30 years, Carrie Ganser, at the Jewel every week, and, and seeing that. And I think that is the future of where we can go. And so that will be such an incredible legacy. And I will keep doing everything as I can. Every day I'm above ground to continue to give back and try to make this world as inclusive as it can be.
Awesome. Yeah, it's amazing to see that the legacy that we can make through this movement. And with that, hopefully we can get the video to unfreeze there. But we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll get into talking about how your son Joey got involved with volunteering with athletes in action with from Yale University to volunteer at the World Winter Games. So we'll get to that after this short break to let you all know that this episode is brought to you by listeners like you. Please join our supporters with a monthly or one-time donation so we can operate our studio and continue our mission, giving respect and voice to people with disabilities. Visit specialchronicles.com/give. That's specialchronicles.com/give to support this podcast. And if you want to access bonus content, like the 15-minute pre-show of Jenny and I just chatted before we started recording, and kind of get where we break down that fourth wall, and we'll let you guys in to that behind-the-scenes access. If you can join now at specialchronicles.com/plus. That's specialchronicles.com/plus to access that bonus content. And with that, Jenny, to introduce this next segment, I'm going to pull in a question that our mutual friend Lisa Noble had texted here. And if for those of you listening, just a quick plug to Lisa's and Coach's Amazing Individuals podcast. If you go to specialchronicles.com and click on browse our podcasts, Lisa's podcast is linked there, so you can, of course, you can listen wherever you get podcasts, but you can also listen to whole podcasts right on specialchronicles.com on the Special Chronicles Network. But Lisa asks how your son Joey told you that he was going to volunteer in Turin and how that made you feel.
Well, first of all, huge shout out to Lisa and Kurt, and I would encourage you to watch their podcast as well. I'm a big fan also of that. And so I'm glad you directed everyone there. But no, it's a great question because it was probably one of the most proud moments as a mom I've ever had, which is, so Joey is a sophomore. He's a football player at Yale. And he called me a couple of months ago and said, "Hey, Mom, I have a question for you." So first of all, it's always great to get, when you're in college and mom, you get a call from your kid. I drop everything and I answer the phone. So that's for starters. But second, he said, I was wondering if I could spend my spring break this year volunteering with Special Olympics. I'm part of, and I knew this, but he shared, I'm part of this group, Athletes in Action, which we briefly talked about earlier, but it's an incredible organization that has been around for 50 years. And they work with athletes, professional athletes and college athletes and beyond, to help instill values of faith and service and share the message of faith and service. And so it's been a very meaningful part of Joey's time at Yale. There's the group, some of the group that came from Yale, and actually Tim Shriver and his son Timbo are Yale alums. So that was really special to have them be a part of it. And so he said there's a group of about 13 of us that are going to want to volunteer through Athletes in Action at the World Games in Turin. And I said, Joe, this is amazing, because he didn't even know I was going already. I was going there for Special Olympics International Board meetings and to volunteer. So this wasn't me asking Joey. This was him asking permission if he could go spend his spring break volunteering. I was like, as a mom, that is just one of the best calls that you could ever get. And so not only did they have 13 student athletes from Yale as part of Athletes in Action, but they had 100 Athletes in Action volunteers from all over the globe. And they had the opportunity to serve together. And it was just an incredible call to receive, but importantly, the experience that we had together was truly life-changing for both of us. And so thank you, Lisa, for the question.
Awesome. Awesome, and that question also kind of tied in with that first question that I had planned.
Yeah.
I've heard a little bit about that athletes in action, but not that much. So it was neat to hear a little bit more. Can you tell us a little bit more about how, just for the sake of time, I'm going to move on, skip over that with that first question that I planned, since you kind of already talked about what inspired your son Joey to volunteer. But how does volunteering with Special Olympics impact you and your son in particular to volunteer as a student athlete, and what has that taught him about the intersection of sport, inclusion, and community?
Yeah, it was really great to spend the week together, not only with Joey, but also with the athletes in action volunteers, both at Yale and throughout, because I got to talk to them and get to know them and really ask them that question. And so, they all shared, and they all shared this in different ways, but I think the common theme that they shared was how volunteering there really reminded them of the power of sport and why they played sports in the first place, and the idea of teamwork and overcoming challenges and working together and being brave in the attempt. And every single one of them shared how it was pure joy. It was pure joy to see the athletes compete. It was pure joy to volunteer with them. It was pure joy cheering them on. There's a video clip of them all dancing and high-fiving. And I think a lot of them said it just re-energized them, not only to be a part of it and to see that courage, but also it energized them in their own sport and seeing the joy. And it's an infectious, amazing opportunity when you see the athletes competing and giving it their all. And in many cases, overcoming so many challenges that they were told maybe that they couldn't overcome. And so I just think it really changed their lives. And I know many of them are heading back to their college campuses. Athletes in Action is actually in 260 college campuses across the country. And many of them now that we're at the World Games in Turin are heading back to their campuses. I know Joey and a few of the people that were there already did an event for Special Olympics Connecticut and want to get more engaged and do more. So that's really encouraging and exciting to see.
Awesome. I love that. And just for those of you watching the video, I'm going to put up on the screen another picture of our mutual friends, Tim Shriver and his wife, Linda, who I'm also friends with both of them. But you maybe just talk briefly a little bit about what it was like. I mean, you've met Tim in the past, but what was like for Joey to meet with him and his wife Linda?
Yeah, and I asked Joey some of these questions. Unfortunately, he's at football practice right now. Otherwise, he would be, and then had class right after. Otherwise, he'd be on with us too. But he answered some of these as I was talking with him the last couple of nights, and it was such a huge honor for him to meet Mr. Shriver and Mrs. Shriver, because they went to the same school he did, and then Timbo, their son, shared how he got started with Special Olympics when he was in college. And I think it was just so inspiring to have that full circle moment and to be there with an alum, and to know that for me, seeing it and how Eunice Kennedy Shriver shared this with her son, and now here I am getting to share this moment with my son, and I'm getting choked up thinking about it, because it's really humbling and inspiring. And I just hope that everyone gets a chance to, volunteer with this next generation, because they are full of energy and positivity and good things. And I think getting this next generation involved is so critical to the movement and the future of it. And so to see it span across these generations was a really powerful moment.
Awesome. I want to just put up on the screen a few other pictures as we move quickly to the last segment. But you want to just briefly comment on this picture of you and enjoying a meal with. I recognize a couple people in this picture. One is my friend Grace Payne from SO New Zealand, who's a Southern Travel Global Messenger. If you guys missed that episode of this series, go back to our episode with Grace, because Grace had a powerful message about inclusion and a powerful message about getting involved in Special Olympics. And then David Evangelista, the president of Special Olympics Europe, Eurasia, is sitting to Grace's left there, and then you on the other side of the table. But just want to just briefly comment on this picture.
This picture makes me smile so much because it was such a meaningful lunch where there was some amazing supporters and donors, as well as just such a global bringing together. Everyone in that picture is from a different country or state. And one of the things, David's colleague that's sitting to the left of him, the foremost in the picture, sorry for those that are listening in, but what was so incredible to me is he had lived in a refugee camp. And so one of the things that we talked a lot about during this lunch and was what is happening currently with athletes, Special Olympics athletes and others, but what it was like to be in a refugee camp. And he has gone on to lead the Special Olympics group that is focused on refugees. And, that's so important right now with Ukraine and so many places. And so some of the leaders at the end of the table there had welcomed in refugees into their Special Olympics movement. And so we just talked a lot about how important it is. I know this is a really moving story, but my very first time as a board member of Special Olympics International, the very first meeting in Abu Dhabi that I went to, they shared a story of a young boy that one of our fellow board members who also works with UNICEF and was at a refugee camp, went to a camp, and he had just reunited a mother and a son. And so he gave them a moment. And while he did that, he was walking around and he found a little boy that was 10 years old and chained to a fence. And he said, well, what is happening here? And they said, well, he has a form of autism, and actually he came to learn later that his mom chained him to the fence because she was worried for his safety and security, and worried in the refugee camp that they wouldn't understand. And so I was sobbing when I heard that. We had the chains at our meeting, and it has an amazing ending in that at the Abu Dhabi World Games, that athlete was actually able to be there and to compete because our fellow board member then helped create a Special Olympics for that refugee camp and others. And they saw what this athlete could do. And he went on to go to school and went on to be able to compete at those games a few years later. And it just makes you expand beyond our local and make you realize there's still so much work to be done for a better understanding. And again, to give these individuals the opportunity to share their gifts and talents with others. And so that particular lunch was so meaningful because we talked about the current work that needs to be done and that can be done.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember that story from the Abu Dhabi World Games. I'm going to quickly move on to a few other pictures, but here's a picture from the opening ceremony. It's a little dark, but the new CEO of Special Olympics Illinois, Pio DeVecchio, and the current chair of our local program in Illinois, Kathy. Fun fact, Jenny, Kathy actually had texted me when she got to the airport in Chicago, and because they were flying from Chicago to Frankfurt and then Frankfurt on to Italy. And I actually, in case my manager is listening to this, I helped them out at the airport, but I also sat and talked with them at the gate. I don't know if I should, in case my employer is listening to this. In case they're listening to this, I did help them, but Yeah, I saw them off at the airport since I'm one of the service ambassadors at United. But yeah, this it, what was it like to see our new CEO and our Cohen board chair there?
It was so great. Kathy and I were on the board together way back when, and we are dear friends. And Pete has been incredible. There we are celebrating a 50th birthday of two of our amazing special Olympics teammates as well, and just we had the best time visiting and celebrating. Of 50th there, and just we become such good friends, and seeing them in that setting, globally, just such great leaders in all these pictures, and again on the podcast, I feel like that has been one of the biggest blessings through volunteering is, as I said earlier, meeting these incredible people who give so much of themselves, the athletes who give so much, and developing these lifelong friendships. So to get to see them in that setting was just incredible. So I celebrated actually Dan Conley's 50th birthday, and Kathy Schneidwin's birthday, which I won't give her age, but we got to celebrate 2 birthdays over there that were so incredibly meaningful. So
Awesome.
shout out to both of them on great birthdays.
Yeah. Big shout out to both of them. Dan, I know that I think he's involved with the technology or something with the games and the results.
Oh yes, he was doing all the results for I believe it was figure skating. He had a big job, but he was lucky to be able to sneak away after it ended for a quick birthday celebration.
Yeah, and then that other gentleman next to Kathy is Dan's husband, Mike. I don't know if he was yet anymore, but yeah, it's neat. And then just a couple other quick pictures I want to highlight for our listeners. Here's a picture with the mascot, Molly, and then Sean, and then Emily Klingo, who is, I think, the chief of leadership and organizational excellence.
Yeah,
who was
Emily's a great leader. Yeah. And then Sean is incredible with all of our government affairs, and both have become dear friends. And I just saw this picture because the mascot was so great. It was the start of the games, and they have just been working nonstop. I don't think any of the Special Olympics individuals that are part of these games slept for months. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out to everyone on the Special Olympics International staff and the local organizing committee, as well as locally the Special Olympics Illinois. Just could not do what we do without your leadership and your incredible work ethic. So grateful for all you do day in and day out for the athletes.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Emily worked with my class of Southern Survivor Global Messengers when for the first half of our term until she got promoted. But Emily, I think, got started in Special Olympics in Chicago here. I think she was a teacher, and so I think her parents still live here in Chicago, and so so that's a fun connection there.
Good friend.
Good friend, Nasha from Zimbabwe, who I think is now on staff with Special Olympics Africa. But yeah, Nasha, I have lots of good memories with Nasha from everywhere from Abu Dhabi, Berlin, when we were in Dublin for the launch of the Unified Leadership. So yeah, lots of good memories with Nasha. And then I had to throw in this picture with Lana on the left, I think, who worked at SOI, and then Manu, and I believe that might be her mom.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, this is one of my friends. As you said, these smiles really say it all in these pictures. And for those that are on the podcast, we're just beaming from ear to ear because of the pure joy of getting to to be there together with each other and some of these friends that I've now met. And we see each other on Zooms from time to time, but to be there physically because they're across the globe literally was just incredible, especially after so long. These Winter Games we waited a long time for because of COVID and other things and delays. So it was truly a reunion of sorts, and a really incredible one at that.
Awesome. Well, just for the sake of time, we're going to sum up the last few segments. But I just want to just quickly mention for our listeners that it's free for you to listen, but it does cost money to keep the lights on, keep the technology plugged in, website, audio, video, hosting. This episode is also brought to you by the ComEd Energy Force Ambassador Program, the country's first energy and solar efficiency education program designed for and taught by people with disabilities. Learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd and specialchronicles.com/ComEd. And this episode is brought to you by United Airlines Bridge Disability Business Resource Group, connecting people of all abilities, including hiring Special Olympics athletes like myself as employees. Learn more on United's commitment for disability inclusion for employment and travel at specialchronicles.com/United, specialchronicles.com/United. But we're going to, for the sake of time, we're going to sum up the last few questions here. I guess you saw the last few questions that are for both you and Joey, but is there any, just for the sake of time, is there any particular highlight that you want to mention? We don't have time to get to all of the last few questions, but is there anything in particular that you want to highlight about both your and Joey's experience, or maybe an impactful lesson that you've learned from working with us Special Olympics athletes and how it's related to your everyday life?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think Joey and I both shared this sentiment when I was talking with him and debriefing afterwards and just reminiscing. So one, it was truly one of the most incredible things that we've done in our 20 years of being together. And it was so meaningful. And so I would encourage all of you again to just do it. Get out there and volunteer. I promise you, you will be so happy that you did. And in terms of lessons, Special Olympics every day that I'm involved continues to teach me to choose kindness, to choose to include. And the Special Olympics athletes just do this so naturally. And it's such a great reminder of how we can live our lives every day. And I'm so grateful in their leadership through their example. We talked about this to a great extent earlier in the broadcast, but to love unconditionally. I kind of thought of this the other day, but one thing that's hugely different at a Special Olympics event is you hug more and you judge a lot less. And again, if we could live our lives every day like that, I think this world could be a great place, and even better than it already is. And I think we're making, strides in that regard. And then Special Olympics taught Joey and I think, also to be brave in our attempts. Don't let fear of the unknown guide you. Don't let fear of what other people think guide you, but be brave in who you are and in the way that God created you each and every day, and continue to share those gifts and talents with others. And lastly, I would just say to live with joy. And I think of joy in all caps, Joy, joy. And life is hard and at times for all of us, and potentially it may be hardest for some of our Special Olympics athletes and what they go through every single day just to get out there to compete, just to get out of bed some days for some of them and what they do. But yet, in spite of that, they somehow manage to be so joyful in the way that they live. And that to me is one of the greatest takeaways. So I know that this week, as we head into Holy Week for those who celebrate, but just this week, in particular, I know that I'm going to come away from the Special Olympics Turin Games and do my best to live joyfully every single day. And I'm so grateful to have had that experience. And I'm grateful that you had me on the show. You're doing an incredible job, Daniel. And I'm so humbled and honored to have been here today.
Yeah, I love those lessons. I think our listeners can get a lot out of it. And just like you, from my time at attending some of the previous World Games, from producing a daily podcast in Los Angeles to being a Southern Tribal Global Messenger in Abu Dhabi and Berlin, it's amazing the joy that both at the World Games, but then also at our local events as well, to see the joy that we bring. It's really powerful that we're able to share that joy with board members like yourself, with volunteers, with the coaches, with staff, and everybody continues to stay involved in this movement. Before we get to the final question, do you have any final thoughts on your overall time here today? This is the last time you on again was just a 10-minute segment, but to be on for a full episode, you have any final thoughts on your overall time here?
I am so happy to be here. Talk about joy. What a great way to start my day. I hope others will walk away feeling inspired. I hope others will walk away willing to just do it and go out and volunteer. Take that leap of faith. Be brave in the attempt. And I hope that maybe that could be a takeaway. And if we just reach one person, that's what it takes. And I just want to thank you again, Daniel, for all you do. This was a lot of prep, and just the passion and the energy that you live your life, but also that you share it with others through Special Chronicles and your work at United and all you do. You continue to be such an inspiration to me, and I want to thank you. And I want to thank you for your incredible gift of friendship all these years. I just truly, there are no words to express my gratitude to you and for being such an incredible part of my life. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing now. Now I think by this November, be podcasting for 17 years now to have this platform of Special Chronicles. So in just a few years from now, so like in 2028, so just before the next World Games, we'll be celebrating just about 20 years, and it's so to be at almost 2 decades of being able to tell and to share these stories on this platform. Almost 20 years ago, I never would have imagined to, because of going through some difficult moments like in high school and in my junior high years, I never would have imagined that I would be for almost 20 years now to be behind this microphone, to be sharing these stories and to hear from listeners and supporters like yourself and many others that are having their perspectives change. I mean, I've heard from many listeners that their perspectives of those of us with intellectual and developmental disabilities are being changed by this podcast, by this platform on Special Chronicles. And so it's amazing to, with all the hard work that it is behind the scenes, it's amazing that it's continuingly to make a difference in so many lives.
Sure, it really is, and I'm just humbled to be a part of it today, and we'll continue to support and be a huge fan, as I started at the beginning of the show. So I can't wait to listen to the next episode.
Yeah, I'm excited. And for those of you that are listening, we got one final question. But if you are listening, if you're just tuning in for the first time, we've got over 700 episodes that you can go back. But I want to highlight particularly this recap of Turin 2025 series. you can go back and hear some excellent, powerfully emotional stories with Lou, the chief of sport and competition, where he goes behind the scenes of the World Winter Games, as well as hear from Southern Tribe of Global Messenger, Grace Payne, hear from athletes who competed in alpine skiing like Tylo, hear from an athlete, Mary, who competed in alpine skiing, hear from a USA coach who is from Illinois, hear from a couple of athletes who competed in the new dance sport, a couple of athletes who competed in alpine skiing, including one that won 2 gold medals, hear about the Global Youth Leadership Summit, the Global Coalition for Inclusion, and from one of the sponsors, United Airlines. So tons of powerful, that's just this particular series, but tons of conversations. You all can go back and listen on specialchronicles.com to find all of the archives. If you're listening on Apple and Spotify, I think in the podcast feed, there's only like the last few hundred episodes, but you can go on specialchronicles.com to find all the episodes. And I just want to share just a few final plugs before we get to that final segment. You can shop our merchandise store, our Disabled Voices Matter merch. We have t-shirts, hoodies, coffee mugs. Disabled Voices Matter, and know that 60% of the profits will go back to Special Chronicles, specialchronicles.com/shop if you want to go and grab some of our merch. Tap that follow button so you don't miss a new episode. Subscribe to our newsletter, and you can find all that on specialchronicles.com. And we got one final question that we've got a bumper, so let's go ahead and roll that bumper.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising.
Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference.
Our demands are
equality.
Dignity.
And the recognition of our
shared humanity. We will not stop
or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
more divided than ever.
And coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution
is inclusion.
Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
And ever since I attended the 2019 World Games in Abu Dhabi, I've been asking all of our guests this final question. And of course, our listeners learned a lot from your story, including some powerful messages that you shared. But this final question is what we ultimately want with this podcast is for listeners to have a call to action and to bring inclusion into their lives, bring inclusion into their schools and workplaces and communities and into society. And this final question, I think, helps. It gives our listeners a good call to action and to bring the inclusion revolution into their own lives. And so what does inclusion mean to you?
It's such a great and powerful question. I think inclusion means to me choosing to see the good, the gifts, and the talents in all people, and respecting others and sharing those gifts and talents to create a world where all people are valued and are able to use those gifts and talents to serve others for the greater good. I think that's what inclusion means to me.
Awesome. That's a powerful way to wrap up this episode. And thank you again, Jenny. It's I enjoyed, and it's a joy to be friends with you for I don't know how many years now.
I think, yeah.
Decades, yeah. And thank you again for taking the time to come on the Special Chronicles podcast, and looking forward to seeing you at the next event.
Well, I look forward to it, and thank you for making this day, starting it so joyfully, and thank you again, Daniel, for all you're doing through your great work and through sharing these stories and just sharing your voice with others and really inspiring me and countless others through your great work. So thank you for having me, and hope everyone has a joy-filled day today.
Thank you. And until next time, we remember choose to include. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles podcast. Our podcast was produced by Daniel Smukowski on the Special Chronicles Network. Follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and review Special Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our website, specialchronicles.com, where you can stream our archives of over 500 episodes for absolutely for free. Also, there's a list of our favorites, original series, award-winning columns, and blogs. And sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content delivered to your inbox. Again, specialchronicles.com. Special Chronicles is hosted by Podbean Podcast Hosting. Our live streams are powered by StreamYard. Thanks, as always, to our business manager, Adam Smukowski, who always encourages us to never give up. I'm Daniel Smukowski, back next week with more stories.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.